Welcome to The Strange Accounts. I'm your host, Matthew Carmona. If you've had an experience with the paranormal, Bigfoot, Dogman, UFOs, or a crazy or weird experience and you want to come onto the show, you can email me at thestrangeacctspodcast@gmail.com. Now, I'd like to appreciate everybody who has listened to the podcast so far. I really appreciate it. I will also be posting the podcast episodes on a YouTube channel called Strange Accounts Podcast, and I have an Instagram page as well, strange_accounts_podcast, where I'll also be posting the episode as well. I would appreciate it if you could go on there, follow, subscribe, like the channel. If you give me a 5-star review, this is just going to help the channel grow. So I appreciate all the listeners that have listened so far. Now, on today's episode, we have Cindy. Cindy's going to be coming on and talking about some of the weird and strange paranormal experiences that she had throughout her life and on some of the jobs that she worked. She's also going to be talking about some UFO encounters that she had as well with her son. So I think you're all really going to enjoy the show. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's get to Cindy. Hi, everyone. We're going to welcome Cindy to the show. Cindy, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing great. Sorry for the little technical difficulty that we had at the beginning, but I think we'll be on a good foot now. So if you just want to start from the beginning, kind of what was going on, what you were doing, and where this happened, and take us into the life of Cindy.
Okay. I was going to college at Sam Houston State in Huntsville. I was a freshman, first year there, and music major. I found out that all music majors have to take piano for 4 years, and I had never had piano, so I sucked. It was horrible. So the teacher's recommendation was for me to go over to this building called Music One. It was just a really, really old building, had like these big grand stairway going up from the bottom floor to the top floor. Looked like Gone from the Wind, that kind of thing. The halls were just one practice room after the next, both floors. And so I would go in there and pick a room and start trying to practice and try to figure it out. I would, really be working on it. And then, a few minutes, I would hear the same song that I was trying to play being played down the hall. And I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be somebody I know because we're both in like the basic class, so it's got to be somebody from my class. Let me take a little break and go down there and see who it is. So I go down there and I get all the way to the door where I know the music is coming from. And there were little bitty windows like this big on the doors. And I could have to step, tippy-toe and peek into the little window to see if I could see anybody. And I never could, and so I would just, a couple of little taps and open up the door. And as soon as I would open that door, the music would just stop, just nothing. I'd open the door and there was nobody in there. There was no music up on the piano. And I even thought, okay, they're playing a joke on me, right? I even looked behind the door. Of course, I got a little bit freaked out. And so I went back to my room and started minding my own business again. And I started trying to practice again. I would keep, start up again. And I wouldn't get, 2-3 minutes into playing again. And it would start over again after so many times. And there's nobody in the building but me. And sometimes it would be nighttime and I'm there and I'm freaked out. I'm trying my best. There's no place else for me to go and practice. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It was the first time I ever had anything like that happen. But the funny thing is that when they played it, there was no mistakes. Absolutely no mistakes. And so I don't know if they were playing it for me to show me how it was supposed to go, or are they playing it for me because, they're like shoving it in my face. I can play it, you can't, that type thing. So I don't know if they were making fun of me or what, but it happened. It happened every time I went to that building.
So you never saw nothing. You just heard it playing down the hallway.
Right, right. Never saw anything. I had friends that had the same thing happen to them. They would find other places to practice. Now, if you were brave enough, you could go to the lobby of one of the dorms, and they would have a big grand piano there, but then you would have an audience. And so I didn't want to do that. I didn't want no witnesses to what I was putting out. I kept on going over to music one, but I would try to get over there and practice during the daylight, and then try to get out of there by dark.
Gotcha.
There was only one way and one way in and out of that building. If you were upstairs, the only way to get out was you had to climb out a window, and it had one of those old ladders that when you got on it, it would go down like a fire escape ladder. And so there was nobody that was going to slip out the back. And I remember one time that I was in there playing, and I kept thinking, okay, which it sounds like it's coming from this way down the hall, say down to the left. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's on the second floor, because I've already checked the first floor. Maybe it's on the second floor. I went up there, and when I got up there, I could definitely tell, no, it's not up here. It's definitely not up here. It's downstairs. I'd go back downstairs, same thing. I would go get to that window, look in that window of that door, and sure enough, it wasn't nobody in there. And I would just, after a while, I would just walk on by, just try to ignore it, just try to let it go.
So this happened every time you played?
Yes, every single time. And I told the teacher, she was like, she could not understand why I could play everything. I played all the woodwinds. I played brass instruments. I played strings. I could play everything. But how come I couldn't pick up the piano? And I said, tell you the truth. I said, have you ever been to Music One and practiced over there? And she says, no, I have a piano at home. I said, well, maybe you need to go over there and just play something. Play something. Because you'll see what happens when you go over there. And they were like, oh, later. But I did have other people that said that it happened to them. But it was mostly girls. It wasn't the guys so
So the
much.
guys never had any encounters. It's just the girls whenever they were over there playing.
There was one guy that did, yeah. But I also think that the guys would hear the music and they would just blow it off. They wouldn't think anything of it. Oh, well, somebody's down there practicing. And I really think that's what it was. And then when I mentioned it to another girl, she started going down to look. And so she's like, she was freaked. And then so word kind of spread, if you hear the music, if you're curious enough, go look. And if you're not, stay where you are. Like I said, it just,
So it would only play the whatever song. So if they were playing a different song, it would play a different song, or would they just play the same song over again?
it would be the one that you were trying to play. It would be the one that you would be sitting there trying to figure out. You're trying to figure out your left hand and your right hand, and then get them put together and everything. And so then the next week, when the next lesson would come around, you'd get your next piece of music to learn. That would be the one that it would do. That's just it went that way every time. It always played whatever you were playing. And I still don't know to this day. It's been a long time since then, and I still don't know to this day what the deal was. Was it a music teacher, or it's just
That's
one of those
indeed,
things.
yeah. It's fascinating to think about. It. It's like and it's also it helps to have other witnesses that have experienced the same thing you have. So it's not like you can't just be like, oh, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm losing my mind. When you look at it and go, now other people have talked and told me that they've had other experiences, same as me. So it helps validate that for you.
Well, at first I didn't really know anybody else. That was the first thing that I started thinking about. Maybe I need to start learning some of these other people that's in my class, and then when they show up to practice, maybe we can go together and practice, so I'm not over there by myself. Eventually I learned everybody's name in the class and, became friends with them. And then that's when try to go down and see who was in the other rooms and things like that. But yeah, a few people also told me that, yeah, it happened to them. But yeah, it was kind of mess with your mind, and then you go back to your room and then you're like, what happened here? What's that? Why? And like I said, most of the guys, they hear it down the hall and they're just like, somebody's playing. They
Yeah,
don't care.
nobody wouldn't investigate it. They're like, nah, they just assumed it was somebody playing.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody down there practicing. I'm doing my thing. I do my thing. I get up and I can leave until I mentioned it to another girl. And then she, out of curiosity, she didn't find anybody either. She started spreading the word amongst the other girls in the class. We were all ganging up to go practice, and it would still happen. Of course, the guys thought it was funny because we were all traveling back. There was only 9 of us in the class, so it was a really, really small little class. 3 or 4 girls, 3 or 4 guys, and so yeah, I just almost flunked that class. I think the teacher had pity on me and gave me a D just to help me out, but it was it was sketchy.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like you had an interesting encounter with something you don't know.
Oh yeah, like I said, all these years and still haven't forgotten it, still haven't got over it. It's something that when you something like that happens continuously over the years, you keep asking yourself, what was it? How did that happen? Is that what I really heard? And I know it is. I know it is. But anyway, that's how it happened.
I think what the emails you sent me, you said the next one that you had happened with your husband.
Um, okay, yeah, when I first met my husband, I I met him through his brother. I knew his brother. So we had this was back like around 1980 or so, and of course there was like the urban cowboy days, and everybody went western dancing, and there were clubs all over the place. One day he says, "Well, hey, let's go over to so and so place," and he says, "Well, I'll come by and pick you up." Well, the deal was that the place that we were going to go wasn't very far past his house. I lived farther over. And I said, well, look, when I get off work, I'll just leave and I'll come by and pick you up. And then we'll go over in my car. And he goes, all right. I got over there to pick him up and he's like, come on in. He's waving at me from the door. I get up there and he's already gone back to the bedroom or wherever it is, get his boots or whatever. As soon as I walk in the front door, it's just like there was this the only way I can think of to describe it, it was like this feeling of dread. It was just like, just something's wrong. And so I just stopped. I stood right there inside the door, with the door basically the hard door open and the screen door like right next to me. And I just stood there and just tried to act cool, like, I'm waiting on him, and so it's all right. I'll wait on him. So he grabs his boots or whatever and he sits down in the living room and put them on. And I said, don't take this the wrong way. I said, but I don't like your mama's house. And he says, what do you mean? I said, I get a creepy feeling. He says, oh, that's gross, mama. Don't worry about it. She won't hurt you.
He said it was his mama, or it was. She said it was.
No, in German, Germans, depending on which part of Germany your family come from, if it's from the northern part, they call their grandparents Oma and Opa. But if you're from the southern part of Germany, it's
Got you. So
Großmama
he was
and
saying it was his
Großpapa.
grandmother. Got you.
Okay. And she apparently died at the house there when he was 2. So he barely knew her. But he knew that feeling. He knew when she was around.
Do you think that's why you had that feeling of dread?
I don't Well, I don't know, because I like I said, I had just stepped in the door, and I felt it may have only been just because I was somebody she didn't know. But after that, never had that again. So I think it's just because she didn't know me. After I, dated him for a while, we got engaged and everything. I was real close with my husband's father, and that was her son. So
Gotcha.
I think I got welcomed in. Did I tell you about the bathroom light in that one?
No, no, please Please go.
Well, same house. Do you want to hear about that part?
Yes, please do. It's your show. Go.
All right. Well, there was 5 kids in the house. The light in the bathroom, the switch was a little bit higher than what, most is standard in houses. It was a little bit too high, especially for kids. The kids couldn't reach it. Back then, what would happen is whenever, a man and a woman, they had kids, they had a small house. Well, then the mom would usually sleep with the girls in one room and the dad would sleep with the boys in another room. They would split up. Father-in-law, he would turn on that bathroom light before he went to bed. So when the kids got up during the night, they didn't have to try to reach it or fall in the dark or whatever. And so that was his habit. He would turn on the bathroom light for the kids. After the kids got grown, he still did it. He liked that bathroom light on. He'd been doing it for 30 years or so. So anyway, he always turned that light on. Well, after he passed away, my husband's mother would get ready to go to bed. She would lock up the house and, do all the stuff that you do before you're ready to, go to bed and everything. She would make sure all the lights were off, and she'd go in the bedroom and she'd lock the door because she was there by herself. She had locked the door and she said she would not get in bed good before that light would come on. She said sometimes she would get up and go down the hall and turn it off. And then she'd go back to bed and she said, wouldn't do it. She said, I'd sit on the side of the bed and the light would stay off. She said, but as soon as I got in the bed, the light would come back on. She had a real heavy German accent. Okay. And so she would holler down the hall and she'd say, Otter, turn off that light. Otter, turn off. His name was Arthur. And she called him Otter. And she would holler for him to turn off that light. But no, that light was going to stay on. And I just wonder about those people that bought that house now. Well, they can't figure out why that light stays on.
That's kind of something you kind of leave out, not telling the buyer. Sorry, something's wrong with the light. It's a wire issue.
There might be a switch. You might want to check
Yeah,
that
you might want
switch.
to check that switch. So he never turned it off, right? She would have to go and manually turn it off, and then when she get back in bed, it would come back on again.
Yeah, exactly. He would wait for her not just to get in the room, lock the door and everything, and then sit down on the bed. He would wait for her to get in bed, and then he'd turn the light back on. She would holler at him, but it's that was her main frustration. Every time you would talk to her, she would have something to say about that light. And I said, "Why don't you take the bulb out?" Well, she said, "Because I need the bulb when I go. I need the light when I go." And I'm like, "Well, okay. I don't know what else to tell you, but just leave the light on. Something you can do to leave the light on." Anyway, what else did I tell you about?
Said your 4-year-old son was invited to a Halloween party.
Oh, the Halloween party. Yeah. The girl that I worked with, I knew her since before neither one of us was married, but we were working for Texas Department of Transportation. Married, and we both got kids, and she was going to have a Halloween party at their new house. I'm like, okay, great. So she gave us an invitation, gave another invitation to a friend of mine, a real good friend of mine. I thought my friend Dee was going with her daughter, all about the same age. We went to the party, got there, rang the doorbell, and as soon as she opened the door, there was that same feeling. It's like, it's just like dread. It's like, it's the most horrible feeling that you can possibly think of. It is very disturbing. I walked in, we were kind of went through the living room and then into the dining room, and she had the patio doors open. I go out the patio doors. I went back for something and then came back through the gate, the lawn gate going into the backyard. I wouldn't go back to that house again. It was just creepy. It was just like, there's something wrong here and I don't know what it is. And so then Monday morning, went back to work, talked to my friend Dee, and I said, how come you didn't go to Carol's party? And she's like, I'm not going to that house. I said, that house is beautiful over there on Lexington Woods, and she's like, that's that house that those 4 people got killed in. Really? And she says, yeah, remember it was on the news? I remember the story, but I did not know that that was the house. I remember what a good deal Carol told me that they got on that house because apparently it was having trouble selling.
I can imagine. I could imagine the reasons why it was having issues selling.
Exactly. And I don't know if other people could feel it or if they just knew the history of the house and I know that they're supposed to disclose it, but they did not tell Carol and John about that when they bought that house. And they never felt anything.
So for them, they never had any incidences at that house for them.
No. But, maybe they just didn't, they don't question it. Something happened that they don't question.
You find a way to just write it off. It was just the lights, or it's just the fan or the air conditioner coming on. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. Or that shadow that wasn't nothing. No, that was probably a car light or something. What else?
Let's see. Yeah, the next one that you sent me was said in 1990. You were driving home with your son, who was 6 at the time.
The orb.
Yes, the orb. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I had turned onto our street and we were about a quarter mile away from our house. That's how far away we were. It was like it wasn't really spring, okay, but the trees hadn't budded out yet. It wasn't really cold outside, but the trees hadn't budded out. And so it was like, trees with no leaves. Right across the street from our driveway was the neighbor's house, and they had a big tree there. And this was a good sized tree, probably 25, maybe even 30 feet tall. It was a big tree. And above that tree, just like opposite from our driveway, was this orb, and it was green. And the only thing that I can think of to compare it to of a traffic light. It was like the color green of a traffic light. It was green, but as soon as we turned that corner, my 6-year-old son saw that light. And he's like, Mama, what's that? And I said, Baby, I don't know. I have no idea what that is. And so we kind of slowed down and I'm driving on slow, kind of approaching the house. And it's still there and it's not moving. The closer I got, I could tell that it wasn't just like a green light, but it looked like it was kind of undulating. It wasn't moving as in distance around it. It was like just, I don't know what else you would call it.
Like inside I guess inside the light looked like it was moving inside.
Like little different textures or whatever inside of that. And so usually he would jump out and go open up the gate. And I said, no, you stay here. I'm getting the gate. Okay. I said, when I get out, you lock the door. I get out, he locks the door, and I go open up both sides of the gate. And when I've got my eye on it, and I'm backing up, walking backwards to the gate. I look up there as I'm going back to the truck. When I got back to the truck door, it just went, and it was gone in, like a second. But I saw it just fly off. And he unlocked the door for me. And I said, it's gone, And he said, what was it? I said, I have no idea. I've never seen anything like that.
How big do you say? How big do you think that orb was?
Softball. About a softball. That's about the closest thing that I can relate to. That's just about a softball. Like I said, just vivid, bright green. I had never seen anything like that. And a couple of weeks later, my son told me, he says, Mama, he says, I saw that light again. I said, where'd you see it? And he says, down by the woods. Now, see, where our property was, there was like an open pasture, not a big one, little pasture there. And then there was like woods and then a bio. That orb, when I saw it, it shot out and went over those woods and over that bio. And then when he saw it, it was going in the woods right along parallel with the bio. My dad bought that property in 1934. I told him about it, and he had never seen anything like that. My mom had never seen anything like that. What do you do with that?
Did you see any more, or was that just during Just during the first time you saw it back in 1990, and then when your son saw it 2 weeks later, that was the only time that you saw it again?
Now, there was one other time that we saw something that was flying, and we were on our way to New Braunfels. We were going to the Wurstfest. We looked out our truck window, and there were like lights in the sky, and they were just darting. There was like 4 or 5 of them, and then they would just like vanish. Another one come on over there, and it was way too fast for a plane to go from here to there. We're talking like 100 miles. Go and just immediately just stop. I have my grandson with me this time, okay, and he's watching them, and we're going down the freeway. We're tired. We're trying to get to the hotel, and he's like, "Grandma, what's that?" I said, "I don't know. It's some kind of lights going back and forth in the sky." I said, "A light shining up in the ground." They were way too high. This is like aircraft. When you see a plane flying over at night, it's like that height. But it was way, way too fast for planes. And then eventually we watched them, and they just all kind of just were gone.
So how many lights were during this time did you see? How many lights do you see during this time?
At one time, we saw 5 or 6 at the same time, and then some would go out, and then you might look out, and there would only be 3. And then another time you might look out, and be maybe 4, it might be 2, but they were moving about, different directions, just shooting around, but they were always to the east of us. And so that would be from New Braunfels, it would be back toward like the Houston area. It would be facing east, is the way that we saw it.
Were they all emanating the same color, or were there different colors?
No, they were all the same color. They were all white lights, and they were all the same size.
All the same size? Gotcha. That was the last time that you had saw any more lights since then, correct?
Yeah, I haven't seen any more lights since then. Now, my husband, he saw a couple of lights, but he'll have to tell you about that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just tell him. Yeah, we can set something up. Give me an email. We can always
Yeah,
talk. If he's got encounters too. So yeah.
yeah. He saw some in the national forest, and then heard of the men in black. He saw these people in the forest, and
Oh really?
yeah, freaked him out. Yeah, yeah, because he was back in there hunting. There was nobody back there as far as they go. They go way back. They saw people back in there, and I'll have to let you tell him about that. Tell you about that, because
Yeah,
that was
yeah. Tell him to send me an email, and I'll get him onto the show.
yeah, yeah. Well, what else? Did I tell you about anything else?
Yeah, the next one you told me was when you worked at the Texas Department of Transportation.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I think it was the tall man.
Yeah, yeah. We were we had just formed a group. Okay. I was purchasing for years. I was the assistant over the purchasing department for like 25 years. And then we started having problems with assets like disappearing, as in being stolen or lost or whatever. My boss asked me what we could do to kind of curtail that. The problem was not only were we missing the merchandise, but the supervisors were cooking the books, if you want to say, to where they didn't get caught. I knew how to catch them. Okay. So I got pulled out to do this, to head up a new department. And he told me, he says, "Well, what do you need?" And I said, "Well, I need this person and I need this person, because they're the only other 2 that know how to catch them." Okay. And we've been there been there forever, 25, 30 years. We sort of made like the core of this new department. Problem was, there was no place to put us. We had no offices. And because we couldn't office with the people that were doing the deed, we found some offices at the back of our sign shop. And the sign shop was a place, when you drive down the freeway, all those signs that you see like do not enter, and you got the ones with the roads on it and exit for here for the airport and everything. That's what they do. They make all those signs. And we were, like housed back at the back of their sign shop. And then a couple of more people were over in one of their warehouses. They let us have a couple of corners over there, and we put some people in there. And we just used partitions to make like little cubbies, ran phone lines and electricity to them, and, hooked up. One day I went from my office, which is on one side of the sign shop, and I walked through there, and then it was like a little hall. And this hall made a T shape. The T shape, I entered on the, I guess you would say, the right side at the top of the T. Turned to my left and went down that little hallway. Talked to the guy that I needed to talk to. And then on my way back down that hallway, I'm coming up, fixing to come to the T. Well, a man crossed from right to left. Okay. This was a large man. He was, like I said, approximately 6'4", 250 pounds, because I compare him to my brother. He was almost exactly the same size as my brother. He passed right in front of me. I thought nothing of it. Okay. So whenever I get like 3-4 steps more, I go to turn the corner back to the right again. I glance to the left and there's nobody there. And I'm thinking, that door that's right there at the end of the hall, that's a metal door. It's like a fireproof door. Okay. That's a metal door with a heavy, heavy door closer on it. There's no way he could have gotten that door open and out of there. And plus it makes a big bang whenever it shuts. But I'm sitting there looking, I'm like, where did he go? So I'll go over there and I open up the door and I look out. And like I said, this was a 20-acre complex. I can see the whole parking lot out there. I can see the lawn. I didn't see anybody. So I went to my right and I looked down the driveway that goes in between the buildings. I didn't see anybody there except for a couple of guys that was up on our loading dock. And I said, did you see a guy come through here with a red plaid shirt on? And they're like, no, hadn't been nobody come through here. They were loading a truck, And so then I went to the other side of the building, which is like wide, wide open. Nobody there either. So I was like, okay. I started thinking about it and I thought, hey, he was tall, had dark hair. He had on some type of a baseball cap. It looked dark. He had on a red plaid shirt, like red and navy or red and black. He had on blue jeans, but I don't remember seeing from his knees down. I don't remember that. It was like there was nothing there. I went back around the corner, back toward my office, and there was a little boy that manages the sign shop, and I asked him, I said, Ryan, did you see somebody just come past here? And he says, no, no. I asked the other guys that were making signs, I said, did a guy in a red plaid shirt just walk through here? No, we haven't seen anybody. And this was, I'm talking about, this is a large room where they made these signs. There is probably maybe even 100 foot from one end to the other. It's a big room. So if anybody came in the back door and walked past them, they'd have seen him. And like I said, all these fire doors, they all slammed.
So you couldn't see his knees, below his knees. So there was nothing there.
I don't remember seeing him. Yeah, it was like he was totally, 100% formed on top. But then the lower he got, he was just, kind of like it faded out.
Did you ever see his face? Did you ever get a chance to do you remember looking at his face?
And saw his face, just like he was walking past me, and he never knew I was there. Yeah, and I know he had dark hair. Okay, his clothes were like kind of a little bit loose and kind of baggy looking. A lot of the guys that worked out on the road, on these road crews and things like that, they wear looser shirts because they're cooler. Most of the guys that worked out on those crews basically dressed like that. And they worked hard and their clothes would get all worn out. After the whole thing happened, I started thinking how much he looked like my brother.
And your brother was
But my brother's alive and well.
about to say your brother's still alive during that time, correct? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And my brother worked for the highway department too. And I even asked him if he was over there. And no, he says, I was out on the road. And so I remember somebody telling me one day that they had seen a doppelganger. And so I don't know if that's what that was or not.
All right, so you might think it might have been his doppelganger.
Yeah, I don't know. A friend of mine said that she had seen her little sister like squatting down and peeking around the corner one day at their house. She just thought, oh, well, she's fixing to jump out and scare somebody because they had a lot of kids in the family. They're a large family. Anyway, she walked around the corner and into the other room, and there was her sister standing there. And so she was like, how did you get in here? She said, I just saw you over there in the hallway, crouching behind the door. And she's like, I haven't been crouching behind the door. I don't know what you're talking about. She says, I've been in here. So, I mean, at the time, I just sort of like put that in the memory bank. And then when I saw that, I'm like, could that be the same thing? And then I finally learned the name of that. It was called a doppelganger. I didn't know what that was.
Now, the last thing I think we're gonna get to is I think you had talked about that you had a unwanted guest in your house.
Oh my God. Okay. We're going to have to save him for later. It might be the best thing is to have me and my husband at the same time to do this.
Yeah, well, I'll have you come back onto the show for a second episode, so we can definitely even possibly get some of his stories out,
Right.
and we can talk about the unwanted guest.
Right. And, but he travels from one house to the next. He's either here or at one of our other friends' house. And so if we've gone to those houses, then Harold will show up there.
And I'm guessing that is his name. So
His
yeah,
name is Harold.
gotcha.
We know who he is.
Yeah, let's just save that for another episode. We can save him for that. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. Unless you have any more stories that you want, any more encounters that you want to talk about.
I've got some more. If you,
Go.
I was working at TechStot, and I had extra work to do, so I came in on a Saturday. And so when you come in, you signed in at the gate with the guard. Okay, so I sign in and everything. I'm going to my office and I'm working. Well, another guy, one of my coworkers, he was there working that day too. My office was next to the men's restroom, and then he was around the corner on the other side of the men's restroom. We were both working. He got done before me, and he's like, "Look, I'm done. I'm heading home." I said, "I probably got another hour to go, and then I'll be done, and I'll be out of here." And he goes, "Well, you're not afraid to stay by yourself, are you?" I said, "No." I said, "Ned's at the gate up there. If I need anything, I'll call him." And so he goes, "Okay." So he left. And so I'm sitting there working. And then probably, a little bit after he left, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I hear some men talking in the men's room. And they're laughing and talking and just like, a couple of guys, maybe even three guys, all just chatting. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. When I signed in, there was nobody here but me and Bobby. And so I called Ned on the phone. I said, "Ned," I said, "who came in?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "There's men in the bathrooms next to me." And he says, "I'm on the way." And so he hooked them up and he ran from the guardhouse over to where I was. He had told me to lock the door because he didn't know who was in there. He had no idea. We were right on I-10, which was a pretty dangerous area. And so he went over there, and I heard him when he hit that bathroom door going in. As soon as he went in there, he's like, "Nothing there." Came out. He knocked on the door and he told me, he says, "Cindy, there's nobody in there." And I said, I know three men in there talking. He says, "There's nobody signed in. Nobody came in past me. And there's nobody in there now." And I said, "Well, all right." And so I finished up my work and I left. And that was another one of those things. But we would work on Saturdays, and we were right next to the mechanic shop. Okay. And we would hear, like the air guns and, how it sound that an air gun makes. We'd hear those go off on Saturdays, and those things were unplugged. We would hear a wrench drop, on a concrete floor. And you go, well, there's nobody working out there. How come that wrench fell? It sounded just like mechanics working. That complex was built on the old Camp Logan. Okay, it was an army camp. It was called Camp Logan. And so if you want to Google Camp Logan, and you can see all the stuff that went on there. It was where the automotive shop was the mule barn. And that was like one of the first highway departments before I-10 was ever there. There was a real colorful history about that camp. I'm not real sure if what all the details were, but look into the Camp Logan, because, like I said, it was an army base. It may have been black soldiers. I'll tell you that. It may, but I know that where the automotive shop was the mule barn. Yeah, and so that was something that we would hear all the time. We'd hear wrenches falling, and we would hear those air guns, go off just like a normal work week. But that place was really old. It was just really, really old. We would, there was always things happening, but I think it's like, if you're open to it and you see it, and then you see it, then you question it. I took my son down to Baytown Tunnel once before they closed it. Right before they closed it, they were going to flood the tunnel. It was closed. And the guy that was the supervisor down there, he says, well, y'all want to go out in the tunnel? People don't normally get to walk in the tunnel and everything. And I said, sure, sounds like fun. My son will like that. So we went down the elevator and we went out into the tunnel and everything. And we're just standing there talking about the tunnel, what they're going to do with it, and, how they're going to sink it basically and fill it full of water, because this is what crossed the ship channel there in Baytown. I kept looking down the tunnel and I saw somebody walk, okay, from the right side out about to the middle and was standing there. And then they walked back. And I didn't say anything. And the guy that I'm talking to, he's facing me, so he didn't see it. Okay. But my son was standing there. He says, Mama, who's that? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, Tommy, is there anybody else in this tunnel? He says, not supposed to be. I said, I just seen a guy down there. I just seen somebody walk out from the left-hand side. He walked right, and then he walked back to the left. He's like, well, we have things like that happen all the time too. Like I said, these buildings are so old and everything.
You could see silhouettes walking.
Yeah, you could see them. You could see them you couldn't distinguish anything about their faces or whatever. And this is like two-lane tunnel, And so this is at least 8-10 foot that it would have moved out into the middle of that tunnel before it went back. It was one of those little weird things.
And he was saying that this is a normal thing that happens?
Yeah, he was saying it happened all the time.
I've just seen silhouettes of seeing what looks like people walking down from side to side inside the tunnel.
Yeah.
Gotcha. When no one else is supposed to be down there?
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you one that really freaked him out. All right. There's like a breezeway under the tunnel, and that's what keeps the exhaust, piped out of there. Okay. And so there's like grates, and then underneath the grates, there's another tunnel underneath there, and it's purely for ventilation. Okay. And they got big, giant fans. I mean, the fans were probably 20 feet tall, and there was 4 fans. So if they ever had to go down below the tunnel to work on it, they would turn the fans off and then lock it. So nobody would turn the fans on while you were down there, because you would be blasted to the other end. He went down there and he's like, it's dark, there's no light system down there. You take either a headlamp or you got a flashlight with you. And he said he was walking down there and he did not get in the tunnel good before somebody put their hand on his shoulder. He says he was by his, now this is the supervisor down there, okay? And somebody put his hand on his shoulder, and he said he turned right around and he ran right back out that door. He says, ain't doing it.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
Not
Nope.
gonna do that.
Nope, I wouldn't either. Wow, that's crazy to me.
It's crazy,
Yep.
huh?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these are, some of these things I'm telling you are secondhand. I didn't personally have those things happen to me, but the thing that I did have at that tunnel corroborated what he was telling. And there's other little things here and there, and I can, as I think of them, I'll jot them down and tell you about them and everything.
Cindy, I appreciate you coming on and telling us the stories and the encounters that you've had with the paranormal throughout your life and from your family.
No problem. Bye. Have fun with all that.
I will. Thank you. All right, folks, that's about wraps up this episode. If you've had an experience and you want to come on the show, you can reach me at thestrangeacctspodcast@gmail.com. If you can also go and subscribe, comment on the YouTube channel, that will help me out. I appreciate that. If you can also follow the Instagram page as well, that's going to help this podcast to grow and get out there to a lot more listeners. So I just want to say thank you all and have a good night. Remember, you can never listen to too